Jacob's love secretly wore my wedding dress, and in the ensuing struggle, the pregnant woman fell. When she was sent to the hospital, we were told she could never have children again. In his fury, Jacob sent me to a convent abroad to become a nun. A year later, Jacob came to personally pick me up from the convent, only to find that I had already run away, and I was holding a child in my arms with red eyes. He scolded me. "Are you trying to force me to marry you with a child? Or are you using this child to insult Rowena for not being able to have kids?" Jacob naturally didn't know that the child wasn't his, and I was about to get married. Chapter 1. More than a year had passed, and Jacob was still as arrogant as ever, but I suppressed my emotions, my eyes bright, and I gave him a slight glance. "You've guessed everything wrong." The contempt in Jacob's eyes hadn't diminished in the slightest, and there was a hint of self-satisfaction and mockery in his tone. "I didn't expect your bad temper hasn't changed one bit. A person like you could never be a daughter-in-law of our Han family." At that moment, Mason, who had just turned 1 month old, began to cry non-stop, interrupting Jacob's rant. He furrowed his brow, and a fleeting look of pity for the child crossed his eyes. He hesitated, as if about to take Mason from me. Just then, a delicate voice called out from afar, and Jacob immediately stopped his movement, his gaze instantly shifting to follow the sound. "Jacob." Rowena's footsteps echoed as she approached. The moment she saw me and Mason, her expression darkened. However, she clung to Jacob's arm in a coquettish manner, asserting her dominance and possessiveness. "Jacob, I didn't know you were here to see Jessica. Should I leave so I'm not in the way?" Jacob immediately explained. "Of course not. She's been reflecting on herself for a year. She probably isn't as petty as she used to be." He looked up to gauge my reaction, and I merely smiled faintly. "How could you be in the way? If anyone's unnecessary here, it's me. I'll take my leave." I pretended to walk away, but Jacob grabbed my wrist, angrily scolding me. "I just said you wouldn't be petty, but it seems you're still the same as before. I really overestimated you." If this had happened before, I would have been heartbroken over his bias towards Rowena. But now, I didn't want to argue with him. I simply pulled my wrist free from his grip. "I need to catch a flight. You two enjoy yourselves." This time, when I returned to the country, I had important matters to attend to, but as I left for the airport, holding Mason, Jacob had also booked tickets for himself and Rowena to return to the country. On the plane, Mason immediately began crying from hunger, so I hurried to the nursing room to feed him. However, Rowena blocked my way, attempting to take my child. "Why can't you calm the baby down? Mason has been crying non-stop. Let me try to comfort him." I quickly dodged, holding Mason tightly and cautiously saying, "Mason has asthma. I'll take care of him myself." To my surprise, Rowena started crying, wiping her tears. "I can't have children anymore. I don't blame you for causing my miscarriage. But can't I just hold the baby?" Her crying caught the attention of everyone on the plane, and they assumed I was bullying Rowena. Jacob rushed over, looking at me with disdain. "Jessica, what's wrong with Rowena wanting to hold the baby? What has she done to make you so relentless? I think you've been poorly raised." I couldn't take it anymore, so I stared at Jacob firmly, my tone carrying a warning. "Mason is my child. Rowena had a miscarriage. Why are you blaming me?" Just as Jacob was about to scold me, several other women on the plane began to speak up for me. "We've been listening all this time, and it turns out you're just playing the innocent victim to steal someone else's child. How shameless! Stealing a child in front of everyone, then crying like that? How embarrassing!" Rowena's face turned red with shame as Jacob stepped forward to defend her. "I'm the child's father. This is my family business." At that moment, a female passenger from a nearby seat scoffed and said, "You, a father? Helping another woman steal a child? What kind of man are you? Don't ever take this flight again. Seeing you two together is bad luck." Chapter 2. Jacob, who had never been upset before, was about to explode in anger, his chest heaving dramatically as he couldn't say a word. Rowena, even more furious, gritted her teeth, tears filling her eyes, and she began to cry as she stormed into the bathroom. Just as I was about to push open the door to the nursing room, Jacob raised his hand to block the doorknob. His voice was as cold as ice, almost gritting his teeth as he ordered the stewardess nearby. There are so many people on this plane with children who need the nursing room. But, Jessica doesn't need it. The stewardess was at a loss for words. But because Jacob was a platinum card holder, she didn't know how to refuse. However, others on the plane were less forgiving. Someone threw a water bottle at him, shouting angrily, "Is this your private plane or something? How unreasonable can you be? A man like this should not be a father." Jacob, too afraid to argue back, simply turned his head, signaling the stewardess to comply. He still wouldn't let go. I spoke calmly, "Then I don't need the nursing room." At that moment, the lady sitting next to me suddenly spoke up. "I'll cover for you. You feed the baby, and I'll immediately complain about this bully of a stewardess." I smiled and nodded. Returning to my seat, the lady helped me cover with a jacket. Finally, after feeding Mason, he stopped crying and fell asleep until the plane landed. Once we left the airport, when Jacob saw I wasn't getting into a car, his expression darkened. He thought I was trying to make him angry. "Jessica, you can take a taxi, but my son can't. Are you trying to gain my sympathy with him?" I looked directly at the unreasonable Jacob. "Mason isn't your son." The man seemed to have heard the funniest joke, letting out a bitter laugh as he looked up. "I really didn't expect this from you, saying such baseless things. You've really lost all boundaries." Jacob was about to say more when Rowena exaggeratedly shivered and sniffled. The man hurried over, concerned. "Are you cold?" Without a word, he draped his own coat over Rowena's shoulders and opened the car door, ushering her into the front seat. When he turned back to look at me, his last ounce of patience seemed to have been exhausted. He frowned and said to me, "If you want to stand here in the cold, then stay here." With that, he didn't spare me another glance. The car sped off. Not long after, the housekeeper of the Hahn family parked in front of me, getting out to help with my luggage. "Madam Hahn, the old master has been eager to meet his grandson. Please get in the car." I thought back to a year ago when Alexander rescued me from the convent. The two of us had secretly made vows to each other. At first, old Master Hahn had opposed it, but as the eldest son, Alexander threatened to end his own life, forcing the old man to relent. Now, with Mason in the picture, old Master Hahn certainly wouldn't object. When we arrived at the Hahn house, the lights were brightly lit. Old Master Hahn lovingly took Mason from my arms, then looked behind me. "Why hasn't Alexander come back?" "I was hoping we could discuss the wedding plans together," I explained. "Alexander still has matters to attend to at the headquarters abroad. He specifically asked me to return to see you and take care of some things related to the domestic branch." Old Master Hahn lowered his head, seemingly lost in thought. Inside the house, the Hahn family was gathered, discussing how to make the wedding grand. As for Jacob, his status was special. He was only a bastard son, so while old Master Hahn could provide him with wealth and status, Jacob had no real standing in the family. Once the plans were finalized, my aunt, who worked as a broadcast station manager, immediately released the news. Jacob's phone call came through right away, his voice laced with questioning and mockery. "Jessica, how dare you discuss the wedding with my dad without my consent?" "I haven't agreed yet," I coldly replied. "Do you really think your opinion matters?" After hanging up, I ignored him and turned to enter Alexander's bedroom in the Hahn house, holding Mason. The next morning, as I exited the room, I bumped into Jacob passing by. A cold aura surrounded him, the color drained from his face, and his eyes darkened. "Why are you sleeping in my brother's room?" Seeing that I didn't respond, Jacob didn't press further but sighed instead. "Since the wedding is already settled, I'll follow your plans. Now, let's go try on the wedding dress." I glanced at the bewildered Jacob, then turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm roughly. "Jessica, you're the one getting married. You're also the one being cold. Is it really that much fun to torment me?" Still angry because of Rowena? I grew up with her. Her ex left her. So what's wrong with me caring about her? I didn't want to continue this conversation, so I replied, word by word, "I think you misunderstand. I'm not angry at all. Not even a little bit." Chapter 3. As soon as my words fell, the storm in Jacob's eyes gradually subsided, and he returned to a calm demeanor. Jacob reached out as if to take my hand, but at a mere glance from me, he quietly let it drop. I've already arranged everything, and the original wedding dress has been resized back to what it was. Whether you go or not is up to you. My eyes brightened, and I immediately agreed. The wedding dress that Rowena had altered behind my back had been delivered to China by Alexander, originally a wedding gift. It now carried a fate too wonderful to describe. If I could get it back, it would be a pleasant surprise. Just as we stepped out of the Han family house, Rowena hopped over like a little rabbit, cozying up next to Jacob. As soon as she saw me, a wave of green tea energy surrounded her. I changed Jessica's wedding dress size last time, and Jacob scolded me so much that my bottom still hurts. But now it's fixed. So you must be happy, right? Rowena smiled sweetly, and Jacob affectionately pinched her nose. His tenderness unmistakable. Rowena is always the best. Given the current situation, it was clear Rowena was going with us, so I sensibly sat in the back seat. Jacob paused, looking confused when he opened the car door, but didn't say anything. I fell asleep during the ride, only waking up when we reached our destination. Once we entered the bridal shop, the staff immediately displayed my original wedding dress, as if returning it to its rightful place. I checked the details carefully, ensuring everything had been restored. Once satisfied, I instructed the staff to pack it away. Jacob, who had been anticipating something, seemed a little darker in his expression, his eyes fixed intently on mine. Jessica, I worked so hard to fix it. Aren't you going to try it on? The staff paused as she handed me the packaged dress. I raised my hand without emotion to signal her to put it away, then coldly replied, I have other things to do. Seeing me leave, Jacob's expression darkened further, the light in his eyes fading completely. Just as he was about to chase after me, Rowena pouted, clung to his arm, and coquettishly said, Jacob, I want to try on a wedding dress too. Can you stay with me for a bit? In the taxi, I could still see Jacob's face like a statue, pale and staring out of the window, devoid of color. Once the car started, I finally relaxed and closed my eyes, instructing the driver, take me to the largest jewelry store in the city, to prepare for the wedding. Alexander had been working tirelessly, so I decided to go pick out the wedding rings to help share the burden. Once inside the store, I immediately spotted a South African blue diamond. Its sparkle mesmerizing. Miss, you really have a good eye. It looks perfect on your hand, the saleswoman remarked. I admired it for a moment and then instructed her to wrap up 2 rings. As I was about to pick out a long life lock for Mason, 2 people walked into the store. How did Jessica know we were coming to look at rings? Is she following us? I didn't look up, continuing to browse. At that moment, the saleswoman handed me the packaged rings, but before I could take them, Jacob slapped them out of my hands. He sneered, What's the rush? Just now you pretended not to care about the wedding dress, but now you're here picking out diamond rings. How hypocritical. Are you afraid you won't get married? At this, Rowena bent down to pick up the bag, opened the ring box, and gasped, Jacob, this ring is beautiful. You and Jessica will look perfect wearing it. But I'm not worthy of it. Jacob hugged Rowena sympathetically, patting her, and then took out a ring, putting it on her finger without asking. It's just a ring. Rowena deserves it. Of course. I clenched my hand, pretending to snatch the ring back. This is my ring. Who gave you permission to wear it? Jacob's face instantly changed. He slapped my hand away impatiently. You bought your wedding ring on your own. I haven't complained about it. So what's wrong with letting Rowena wear it? You're being so petty. Rowena pretended to be understanding, wore the ring for a while, and then took it off. But secretly, she bent the band. I want Jacob to buy me one like this. I don't need this one. After saying that, she tossed the ring on the ground and whined for Jacob to buy her a new one. I didn't pay attention to them anymore, choosing a necklace and going to the cashier to pay. The next day, I was already in the wedding dress, prepared and ready. However, Jacob barged into the backstage, his anger and confusion barely contained. Jessica, is this your way of forcing me into marriage because of what happened with the rings yesterday? I'm telling you, Jessica, I'm not attending this wedding. You can reflect on your behavior before we get married. I don't believe you'll always be this unreasonable. As soon as he finished speaking, the MC, who had been checking the program, twitched his mouth and double-checked the script. Mr. Hahn, the groom is not you. It's Mr. Alexander. Jacob's eyes instantly widened, his expression frozen in shock as he looked at me. What? What does this mean? Jessica, explain yourself. What do you mean the groom is not me, but my brother? I stood in front of the mirror, finishing my makeup, and replied calmly, since I came back to the country, I never once said I wanted to marry you. It's always been you imagining things. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, straightened my dress, and looked back at the shocked, crestfallen Jacob. You said you weren't going to attend? Fine. Alexander and I never even sent you an invitation. If you can't wish us well, then you can leave now. Chapter 4. As I was about to lift my leg and walk away, dragging my wedding dress behind me, Jacob suddenly yanked my arm forcefully, leaving a red mark on my skin. He stared at me in disbelief, trembling all over. Jessica, stop it. I could tolerate your childishness before, but this is about marriage. To force me. You purposely didn't want to hold the wedding, and now you're dragging my brother into this ridiculous game. Are you crazy, Jessica? The pain made me jerk my arm away from him, and I slapped Jacob hard across the face. The veins on his forehead bulged instantly. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. So, in Jacob's eyes, does he think I still have lingering feelings for him? That love had long since faded into the wind. The moment he locked me in that convent, I rubbed the red mark on my arm, trying to make it disappear quickly, hoping I didn't appear so out of control. At just that moment, the event staff came over to call me to the stage. I quickly composed myself. I glanced at Jacob one last time. Then, supporting my maid of honor, headed to the ceremony. Jacob kept following closely behind, trying to stop me and ask me for an explanation. But soon, Alexander noticed and sent bodyguards to block the backstage, preventing Jacob from causing any further disruptions. The wedding ceremony didn't have many formalities. I took Mason from the nanny and stood on stage with Alexander, with all eyes on us. I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Alexander didn't seem bothered by that. He tightly held my hand and leaned in to whisper in my ear, "Don't be nervous. After all, you're already my wife." But while the scene between Alexander and me was filled with warmth, apart from the Hahn family who sincerely wished us well, others couldn't stop whispering. Jessica made a seamless transition. Didn't expect she even has a child now. I guess she's marrying into the Hahn family after all. Isn't that how it is with rich families? So many forced marriages. Where's the true love? A woman gets to marry up, no matter who she marries. It doesn't really matter. The small mutterings of a few people caused the atmosphere, which had been joyful, to freeze. Just when I felt utterly embarrassed, Alexander took the microphone from the host and responded seriously. "It's my brother Jacob who has wronged Jessica. She's suffered so much, and I've done everything I can to help her resolve her pain. It's me who's been pursuing Jessica. As for our child, Mason, it's something we both agreed upon, just so that the old man could be at ease. If anyone is forcing a marriage, it's me, not her." As soon as Alexander finished speaking, the murmurs from the audience quieted, and the ceremony proceeded. But no one expected that. Right after the host introduced the next segment, Jacob stormed onto the stage and snatched the microphone. Everyone was stunned. The atmosphere, which had just started to ease, became even more tense. The air so thick it felt suffocating. Seeing Jacob so agitated, Alexander stepped in front of me, fiercely warning, "I suggest you leave now. Don't force me." But Jacob seemed completely indifferent to anyone's warnings, ignoring Alexander and staring at me intensely. "Jessica, I'm giving you one last chance. Come with me now." The cheerful mood was completely ruined. I furrowed my brows and impatiently looked at him. "If you're sick, go see a doctor. I'm marrying Alexander." Jacob laughed maniacally, as if he had heard the funniest joke, and was about to announce something into the microphone. His actions immediately triggered a furious reaction from the Hahn patriarch, who trembled in anger. "Jacob, do you want to see what you've become? Are you still a part of the Hahn family? Jacob scoffed, and there seemed to be tears in his eyes. Father, you've never considered me a part of the Hahn family. As soon as his words fell, the old man's chest heaved dramatically. He started speaking incoherently, waving his hand at the bodyguards. Quick! Get this unreasonable troublemaker out of here. This is utterly disgraceful. Ant quickly helped the old man sit down, patting his chest to help him catch his breath. At the command, several bodyguards rushed to the stage, grabbed Jacob, and dragged him out of the ceremony. For a moment, Alexander seemed exasperated with Jacob, but then I tugged at his sleeve, smiled, and patted the back of his hand. Jessica, don't worry. No one can stop us from getting married. With Jacob removed from the picture, the wedding continued. However, the media was quick to criticize. The Hahn family's second son caused a scene at his older brother's wedding and tried to steal the bride. The cameras were clicking away non-stop. But this incident actually helped Jacob in being relieved of his position as the president of the subsidiary company. Once the ceremony ended, Alexander and I took a car back to the Hahn residence for the wedding banquet arranged by the Hahn family. Mason attracted a lot of attention, and just from him alone, there was a mountain of red envelopes. Alexander looked both amused and frustrated, his voice tinged with jealousy. It's hard for me to come back to the country, and no one gives me a red envelope. But now that we're married, everyone's flocking to give all their red envelopes to my son. Sigh. His words immediately made everyone burst into laughter, with relatives eagerly trying to hand him red envelopes. Aunt pouted, teasing. Looks like Alexander's been living abroad too long. Now he's all slick with his words. Ha ha ha. I casually handed him a red envelope to shut him up, but Alexander directly grabbed my hand and whispered in my ear with a mischievous tone. I wonder when the dinner will end. We can't skip the honeymoon just because we have a child, right? Ugh. I'm so tired. I felt my face flush, my heart racing. I pinched his thigh to hold back my laughter. Ow. Chapter 5. At the banquet, everyone was in high spirits. Although no one was paying attention to us, it was clear that no one had any intention of leaving. Alexander leaned on my shoulder, acting coquettish for a while, but eventually became impatient. He sat up and seemed ready to suggest bringing the event to a close. However, before he could speak, a hurried voice came from outside the hall. Jessica, how long are you going to keep avoiding me? Jacob had broken through the barriers and barged into the hall. Everyone in the room looked at each other, unsure of how to handle the situation. Only the Hahn patriarch slammed his fist on the table, no longer the kind and gentle figure he had been earlier. Jacob, if you still recognize me as your father, leave immediately. Don't disrupt your older brother and sister-in-law's wedding. Jacob exuded an air of fury, clicking his tongue as he scoffed at the old man's words. Sister-in-law? Jessica is my fiancée. Why should I call her sister-in-law? Are you all joking? Alexander, who had initially not wanted to stoop to his level, suddenly turned serious, his eyes darkening as if a storm was coming. Jacob, it's a fact that Jessica and I are in love and married. What kind of behavior is this? Causing a scene in front of everyone? I don't care whether you accept it or not, but from now on, when you see Jessica, you will address her as sister-in-law. At that moment, it was impossible to tell whether Jacob's expression was one of tears or laughter, but the coldness in his demeanor was palpable. Alexander, fearing I might be in danger, shielded me with his body, but I gently patted his shoulder and stepped forward. Jacob, oh no, brother-in-law, though I don't know why you're causing such a scene today, at least in front of everyone, you should calm down. Jacob's eyes were red, and the bloodshot look in them was almost unsettling. His voice was deep and hoarse. Jessica, must we really come to this? You must still remember the sweet times we had together, right? Why is it that every time I see my brother, you forget everything about us and marry him without a word? Jacob's words no longer affected me. I nodded slightly and smiled. What's in the past is in the past. It's not appropriate for you to say such things at our wedding banquet. As I spoke, Jacob's fists clenched tighter. Before I could react, he took several steps forward and tried to grab me. His actions were immediately stopped by the Hahn patriarch's roar. How dare you? Alexander grabbed Jacob's arm and pushed him back a meter. I've given you the respect you deserve. I hope you don't push your luck. Before Jacob could respond, Alexander landed a solid punch, sending him crashing to the floor, unable to rise. In an instant, blood started to seep from the corner of Jacob's mouth. It seemed that the commotion had disturbed Mason. As he began crying loudly, Alexander turned to me and said, "Take Mason to the room. Leave the rest to me." I hesitated for a moment before nodding, preparing to leave. Just then, I felt a force pulling at my dress. I turned to see Jacob standing there, his expression softening. The wildness and breakdown from earlier had vanished. "Jessica, please don't abandon me. I really still love you." I couldn't help but notice Mason still crying, and my patience started to wane. I looked at him coldly. "Brother-in-law, what you're saying right now is crossing the line." Ignoring Jacob's stunned and bewildered expression, I slightly bowed. "Goodbye." I quickly took Mason and left, but the sounds of fighting intensified behind me, echoing through the hall. I could hear Alexander, out of breath, speaking with the authority of an older brother. "Don't you want a fight? Fine. I'll fight you." I hesitated for a moment, but thinking of the Han patriarch being present, I knew Alexander wouldn't be hurt. Once we returned to the room, I had just managed to calm Mason down when the sound of an ambulance siren reached my ears. I hurriedly looked out the window, only to see Jacob being loaded into the ambulance. Rowena, standing beside him, was holding onto Alexander's collar, crying hysterically. "My Jacob! What happened to him? Aren't you his older brother? Why did you beat him like this?" Alexander showed no mercy, shoving Rowena to the ground, and coldly responded, "He brought this upon himself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to strike him on my happiest day." Rowena's eyes flashed with a glimmer of hope, her excitement palpable. "So, Jessica, you really married him? Does this mean Jacob can marry me now?" Alexander let out a helpless laugh and then ordered the door to be closed. Just then, my phone rang. It was a senior executive from the subsidiary company. He said they had seen the news reports, and Jacob's crazy wedding crash had already affected the company's stock. "Miss Jessica, this is the perfect time for you to take action." I stood by the window, watching the ambulance drive away, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I replied, "Then I'll leave it to you, Mr. Sue." Chapter 6. Just after hanging up the phone, I felt a strong pull at my waist. I turned around to see Alexander lazily resting his chin on my shoulder, his voice soft and playful as he acted coy. "Wife, it's all that little brat's fault. He ruined our honeymoon night." I couldn't help but laugh in exasperation as I tried to support his weight, gently pinching his firm cheek, feeling guilty. I didn't expect him to cause so much trouble. "It's definitely been a headache. By the way, Sue from the subsidiary called me earlier. According to him, we should move quickly with Jacob's resignation. The longer we wait, the worse it will get." But Alexander was completely uninterested in this matter. He reached up and twirled a lock of my hair, moving even closer. "Shoo, let me take care of everything, okay?" Noticing the flirtatious atmosphere, I instinctively glanced at Mason, but Alexander suddenly gripped my chin and forced me to look into his eyes. The quiet room allowed the charged atmosphere to spread freely. Slightly tipsy, he only needed a gentle pull to press me onto the bed, his eyes guiding me. In the next moment, Alexander kissed me suddenly, his lips trailing down my body, leaving me stunned, my mind buzzing. I grabbed his wandering hand, giving him a serious warning. "If you wake the baby, I'll leave Mason for you to soothe." Alexander squinted slightly, seemingly not paying much attention to what I was saying, but he quickly agreed without a second thought. But just as we were getting into it, Mason woke up, his small voice crying out. Alexander's movements abruptly halted, his face full of grievance. "This is your fault. If it weren't for you, the baby wouldn't have woken up." I was about to argue, but before I could, Alexander planted a kiss on my lips, silencing me. He gently stroked my head, straightening his lips, glancing at Mason, and then looked at me with a loving gaze. "You've had a long day. Don't worry. I'll take Mason to the guest room to get him back to sleep. You should get some rest." After watching Alexander leave with the baby, I gradually drifted off to sleep. However, the next morning, my aunt rushed into my room to wake me up. Jessica. Alexander and Jacob got into a fight at the company. I quickly got dressed and asked the butler to rush me to the company. When I arrived, I saw that everyone was gathered around the second-floor platform, blocking the way. Jacob's posture suggested that he had already learned about the shareholders' request for his resignation. When he saw me enter, his manic behavior immediately stopped. He stared at me in disbelief. Jessica, was it you who suggested I step down? I've always been sincere with you, and now you're doing this to me? I frowned, unimpressed by his words, and replied coldly, "You're overestimating me." This matter was discussed between Dad and Alexander. The truth is, you don't have the capability to be a good CEO, nor can you take the Han family to greater heights. Jacob suddenly looked defeated, taking several steps back as he looked at me with a wounded expression. Jessica, if you're willing, I can give up everything, the company, everything. Let's get a divorce right now, and I'll marry you. I'll give you everything I have. What do you say? I immediately felt a headache coming on. I stepped closer to Alexander, sizing him up. You should stop calling me by my name from now on. With so many outsiders here, just call me sister-in-law. It's more fitting for the family. Jacob clenched his teeth in anger, hatred radiating from his eyes as his veins bulged on his forehead. Before he could say anything, a petite figure rushed in from a distance. Shouting Jacob, Rowena squeezed her way through the crowd, immediately grabbing Jacob's arm as she cried out dramatically, "Jacob, this woman isn't worth it. Marry me, please. I'll agree to marry you right away." The former assistant, now calling for marriage with Jacob, instantly sparked murmurs among the crowd. "No way. Rowena, the assistant, and Mr. Han are already at the stage of marriage discussions? I thought they were just in a hot romance." Well, now both members of the Han family are married. What a double celebration. Chapter 7. As the eldest brother, Alexander cleared his throat as he watched the scene before him. If you two really want to get married, I'll persuade Dad. As for the issue of social standing, I don't think it will be a big problem. When Rowena heard Alexander say this, she was so excited that she nearly jumped up, eagerly grabbing Jacob's arm and shaking it. "Jacob, since your brother agrees, let's hurry up and get married. I've been looking forward to marrying you so much." Slap. Jacob, with all his strength, slapped Rowena across the face, the sound echoing through the empty building. Everyone in the room gasped, and Rowena's smile vanished, leaving her standing still like a statue. "Jacob." Rowena stared at the man before her, who was devoid of any affection, her pale lips trembling. Jacob took a deep breath, his tone like it was wrapped in ice, cold to the extreme. "When did I ever say I'd marry you? The one I've always loved is Jessica. Don't think too highly of yourself." Rowena stood frozen in place, with tears in her eyes. She covered her left cheek, her brow furrowed in a pitiable expression. "Jacob, you used to be so good to me. You were always on my side. Why are you saying such things now? What makes her so much better than me?" Jacob sneered dismissively, his lips curling in disdain. "You're nothing compared to her. I was good to you just to make Jessica jealous. And now look, because of you, Jessica has already married someone else." It wasn't just me. Everyone present must have been shocked to hear Jacob curse so openly. Realizing his slip of the tongue, Jacob slowly reined in his emotions and turned his head away. "Leave. Don't ever let me see you again." But Rowena kept crying uncontrollably, so Jacob called security to drag her out. The atmosphere in the room was icy, but Jacob didn't seem to care. He slowly walked up to Alexander, staring at him with a provocative gaze, frowning fiercely. "I never thought my usually calm and composed big brother would fight me over a woman. If that's the case, I'd rather not have you as my brother." Alexander's brow twitched slightly. He subconsciously turned to look at me, then smiled and replied, "Do whatever you want. I just want to be with Jessica. I can't bother with anything else." Alexander quietly stepped back a few paces, came to my side, and took my hand, kissing it softly. He then turned to glance at the now despondent Jacob and nodded to the bodyguards. The bodyguards, receiving the signal, rushed over to surround Jacob, coldly escorting him out. "Mr. Han, please." Jacob's defiance didn't fade in the slightest. He pressed his tongue against his cheek, pushed past the bodyguards, and walked out on his own. Meanwhile, the shareholders held a meeting and officially relieved Jacob of his CEO position. Alexander decided to temporarily take on the role, staying in the country to work alongside me until I was capable of taking on the position myself. After the shareholders left the meeting room, many employees were seen rushing out of the building. One of them reported the situation. There's been a car accident in front of the company, but the police have already been called. According to witnesses, after Jacob left the company, he ran into Rowena, who had been waiting for him. Rowena pleaded with him, willing to marry him, but Jacob was so emotionally broken that he couldn't tolerate her anymore. In the struggle, Jacob pushed Rowena into oncoming traffic. Blood was spilled immediately, and passers-by called the police. When we arrived at the building's entrance, we found Jacob sitting motionless, watching as the paramedics collected Rowena's body. Soon after, the police arrived and reviewed the building's security footage. Piecing together what had happened, they decided to take Jacob in for further questioning. The moment Jacob was handcuffed, he looked at me thoughtfully, but then he didn't lift his head again. As expected, Jacob was arrested for manslaughter, but rumors from the prison indicated that his mental state was deteriorating. If the next psychiatric evaluation confirmed this, he would be transferred to a mental institution. Upon hearing this news, old Mr. Hahn was so enraged that it nearly triggered a heart attack. He immediately announced that he was severing all ties with Jacob. With all the chaos, things seemed to finally come to an end. Alexander and I focused on our work, and for me, it was certainly a challenge. Late one night, I was still working overtime at the company. Suddenly, I felt a slight weight on my shoulder. "You should go home. Don't overwork yourself." Alexander handed me a cup of hot milk, holding my hand gently as he tilted his head, gazing at me with concern. I took the milk and my eyes happened to glance out the window at the falling snow, illuminated by the streetlights, making it look especially beautiful. It's the first snow of the year. In that instant, neither of us felt sleepy anymore. Alexander tightened his arms around me from behind, and together, we watched the first snow outside. He whispered in my ear, "I love you." Everything felt so beautiful, like a painting, transcending all the mundane worries and chaos.